Hello, math students. Welcome back to Module 3, Expressions and Equations. This is Lesson 6, and it is called Understanding Equations to Solve Them. Our goal for today we will discuss what an equation is and how to use algebraic expressions to solve them. The question that I want you to think about is, what model can you use to help you solve equations? All right, so the best way to do this is to use a couple of practice problems to see what we would do and how to solve them. It says decorating. You have two posters to hang up in your room. The wall is 14 feet wide. Each poster is 4 feet wide. You want to space the posters evenly along the wall, write an equation, and solve for the distance. Okay, so basically, we read the story, we understand it, now let's read it again to look for quantities. You have two posters to hang in your room. The wall is 14 feet wide and each poster is 4 feet wide. You want to space the posters evenly along the wall, write an equation, and solve for the distance. Okay, so we now have the quantities. We know what the question is about, and now we are going to actually try to do it. So one thing that I like to do when I'm working with problems like this is I like to draw a picture of what I have. So I have a 14-foot wall. So let's say that's the wall. And then I have two posters that I'm going to hang up, and each poster is 4 feet wide, and then I want them to be evenly spaced. So my picture, I would say, and again, this is not drawn to scale, but if those are our two posters right there, and we want them to be evenly spaced, basically what that means is we want the distance from here to here to be the same. We want it to be the same from here to here, and we want it to be the same from here to here. Now again, mine is not drawn to scale, and I apologize for that. But basically, we want these three spaces to all be measured the same amount. And what we do know is we know that from there to there, it's 14 feet. And then we also know that from here to here, it is 4 feet. Okay, and from here to here is 4 feet. What we do not know is we don't know how many feet this would be, but we want it to be the same all the way across. So we're going to use the same variable because this has to be the same as this has to be the same, and this has to be the same. And so now, if you look at our picture, we can come up with an equation really easily. And the equation that my eyes see is I see 1, 2, 3 x's. And then I see two groups of 4 feet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So plus 8. All of that has to equal the space that we have available, which is 14 feet. So did we just write an equation to figure out what we need the space to be in between each of the posters? And the answer is yes. So now you're just going to use a BU chart like you have been taught and like you've been using for a long time, and we're going to solve. Okay, so our build and undo chart. Remember, you start with a variable first. The variable was x. What did we do to x first? We multiplied by 3. Then we added 8. And now remember, you have to work backwards. So what's the opposite of adding 8? Subtract 8. What's the opposite of multiplying by 3? Dividing by 3. And you're left with x. Okay, so now let's go. We're going to subtract 8 from both sides. That's not too difficult. 8 minus 8 creates a 0 pair. So now what do I have left on this side? 3x, because 3x plus 0 is still 3x. And then 14 minus 8 is 6. And now you're thinking to yourself, I have to divide by 3. So divide by 3, divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 is x. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So now I know that the space in between each one of the posters and the wall needs to be 2 feet. So I have 2 feet plus 4 feet is 6 feet, plus 2 feet is 8 feet, plus 4 feet is 12 feet, plus 2 feet is 14 feet. And so everything will fit the way that it's supposed to. Okay? So that wasn't too bad. All right? And did we use an algebraic expression to help us figure it out? Yep, the algebraic expression that we figured out was we had 3x's plus 8 feet, and then we knew that the whole wall was 14, so then we could turn it into an equation that said 3x plus 8 equals 14. Okay, so that's pretty cool. That one wasn't so bad. Let's try another one. Ages. The ages of 3 sisters are consecutive integers. Consecutive, right here, consecutive means one right after another. So if you go in order, consecutive would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because consecutive means right after the other. Think of consecutive. Every time you see the word consecutive, I want you to think of stairs. When we climb stairs, we go up, 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 up until we're to the top. Okay, so consecutive means one right after the other. The ages of 3 sisters are consecutive integers. The sum of their ages is 45. What are their ages? Okay, so now let's read it again for quantities. Okay, so the ages of 3 sisters, so there are 3 of them, are consecutive integers. That means they're right after each other. The sum of their ages is 45. What are their ages? Okay, so now we're going to write a math sentence frame to help us. How many sisters are there? 1 plus the other one plus the other one, because there's 3 sisters. So blank plus blank plus blank. Consecutive means they're one right after the other. The sum, that's why we put plus, of their ages is, so it's equal to 45. What are their ages? Okay, well that's getting easier because we know that there are 3 sisters. Their ages go right in order. So if one sister is 12, the next sister has to be 13, and the next sister has to be 14. That's what consecutive would mean. So you have to find one sister's age, and then you have to tell what the next sister would be, and then the next sister from there would be. So let's pretend that we know that the first sister is X, because we really don't know. We don't know what age any of them are, but our job is to figure it out. Well, if the first sister is X years old, what would be the sister right next to her be, remembering that it's consecutive, and consecutive means one right after. So if you have X, what would the next sister's age be? One right after the other, so it would have to be X plus 1, right? Because that's the way you show that it's the next sister right after. And then if we have to show the next sister after that, it's actually X, but it's not plus 1 this time because that would be her again. It would have to be X plus 2. That's right, because there's 2 ahead of her. So here is the sister. This is the sister that's 1 year older than her. And here is the sister that is 2 years older than her. Do you see how that works? And that's called consecutive because it's one sister right after the other. Okay, so now, do we have an equation? Yes. Do we have expressions that make up that equation? Yep, we have x, then we have x plus 1, and then we have x plus 2. So we have 3 expressions added together to make 45, and that makes it an equation. Perfect. So that's not so difficult, right? So now, let's combine our like terms. So I see 1, 2, 3 x's, and then I see a 1 here, and I see 2 here. So 1 and 2 actually makes 3. So now I have 3x plus 3 equals 45. And now I know how to solve this with the BU chart. So let's use our BU chart. So our variable is x. We multiplied it by 3 first, then we added 3 second. Remember, to undo it, you have to work backwards. So the opposite of adding 3 is subtracting 3. The opposite of multiplying by 3 is dividing by 3. And then we will end up with x. Okay, first thing on the list, subtract 3 from both sides. Subtract 3 from both sides. 3 minus 3 is 0. 0 plus 3x is 3x. 45 minus 3 is 42. Divide this side by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1x. And then divide this side by 3, because what you do to one side, you have to do the other. 3 goes into 4 one time with 1 left over. Bring down your 2 is 12. 3 goes into 12 4 times. So now we know that the youngest sister was 14. So the youngest sister is 14. What is the age of the sister right after her? 15. And what is the sister that is right after that middle sister? 16. So those are the ages of the three sisters. So did we find the ages of the three sisters? 14, 15, 16. Yes. Did we use expressions added together into an equation to solve it? Yes, we did. Okay? How are we feeling? This really is not so hard if you just slow down, pay attention to all of your terminology that you know, and then you can figure it out. All right, let's try a couple more. So we have a puppy pen. You are designing a rectangular puppy pen. The total amount of fencing that you have is 30 feet. The length is 6 1/3 feet longer than the width. What is the length and what is the width of the puppy pen? Okay, so we know it's about a puppy pen. Now we're going to look for quantities. You are designing a rectangular puppy pen. So I'm actually just going to remind myself. Here's my puppy pen. It's in the shape of a rectangle. The total amount of fencing that you have is 30 feet. That's a quantity. The length is 6 1/3 feet longer than the width. What is the length and the width of the pen? Okay, so I'm starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with this. So we're trying to figure out what is the length of the width. We don't know the width, but we do know that the length is 6 1/3 feet longer than the width. So that's giving me some more information. Okay, so now again, going back to drawing that picture, here's my rectangular puppy pen. I know about that rectangular puppy pen that if I started right here and I went all the way around with my fence, I know that all the way around the fence is 30 feet. I do know that. Okay. And then I also know that the length of my pen is 6 1/3 feet longer than my width. So I'm thinking, and if you want to agree, you can. I don't know what my width is, so I'm going to say the variable this time is width. But then I also know right here that it says the length is 6 1/3 feet longer than the width. So the length has to be the width plus 6 1/3 feet. Do you all agree? Yeah, because that's what it says, right? Okay, so now we also have this side, which is also known as a width, right? Because we're doing perimeter, so we need to know what each side is. So this is width, this has to be width. Then this would also have to be width plus 6 1/3 because this is also considered a length when you're trying to find all the way around. Now we're just going to use what we have and put it together. So I see 4 things that we're adding together. So math sentence with 4 blanks, right? There we go. And then what we have is we have width plus length, right? Plus width plus length. Okay? That's what we have. And then all of that together, because the only amount of fencing that we have equals 30. And now I've used expressions. These are all expressions, right? I've used expressions and I've turned it into an equation because I know that my total fencing that I have is 30. Well, that wasn't so horrible. Okay, now let's put the stuff that we have together. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4 W's. Okay, so I have 4 W's. And then I have a 6 and a 6, which I know is 12. And then I have a third and a third, which would be 2/3. So I actually have to take plus 12 and 2/3, because that's what I have, right? And all of that equals 30 feet. And now all I have to do is use a BU chart and solve it. Okay, so let's do our BU up here. My BU, my variable is W. I multiplied by 4. I added 12 and 2/3. So when we're solving, we work backwards. So I'm going to subtract 12 and 2/3. Then I'm going to divide by 4, and I should get my width. Okay. Now, there's something that I don't like about this right here because it's a fraction. So I know I have to subtract, and in order to subtract, I have to have a fraction to take away from. So I'm actually going to exchange this 30 and I'm going to make it 29 and 3/3. Do you see why I would do 29 and 3/3? Well, 29 and 3/3 really is 30 because 3 divided by 3 is 1 and 1 plus 29 is 30. So do you see how I didn't even change how much I have? I just wrote it differently. And the reason I wrote it differently is because according to the BU chart, the first thing I'm supposed to do is subtract 12 and 2/3. So I'm going to subtract 12 and 2/3 from both sides, right? And 12 and 2/3 minus 12 and 2/3 makes a 0 pair. So on this side, I'm left with 4W equals, and then 3/3 minus 2/3 gives me 1/3. And 29 minus 12, well, 9 minus 2 is 7. 2 minus 1 is 1. That equals 17 and 1/3. And now I have to take 4 and divide it by 4 and divide this by 4 because that's what it says in the BU chart to do. 4 divided by 4 equals W. And now I have to take 17 and 1/3 divided by 4. Okay, well that's not so hard. So the first thing I have to do is turn this into a fraction greater than 1 or an improper fraction. So 3 times 7 is, let's actually just show the work over here for me because I can't do that one in my head. So 17 times 3 is 21, 51. Okay, so I got 51 plus 1 more. So that would be 51, 52. So now this problem shows 4W equals 52 thirds. Okay, so when we divide this by 4, it's actually the same as multiplying by 1/4. So now I have 52 twelfths, right? And then we can simplify that because they're both even numbers. So 52 divided by 2 goes in there 2 times with 1 left over, and 2 goes into 12 6 times, so that becomes 26, and 12 divided by 2 equals 6. Okay, so that works. So now let's do it by 2 again, and we get 13, and we get 3, and now I can actually work with that because 3 goes into 13 3 times, right, which is 9. No, it could actually go in there 4 times. I'm sorry, it can go in there 4 times. 3 can go into 13 4 times because that's 12 with 1 left over, so it would be 4 1/3. So the width equals 4 1/3. So this width right here equals 4 1/3. This width right here equals 4 1/3. And then this width right here equals 4 1/3. So the actual length, because remember the length is 6 1/3 larger than the width, so I would have 4 plus 6 equals 10, and 1/3 plus 1/3 equals 2/3. So now I know that the length equals 10 2/3, and the width equals 4 1/3 feet. Okay? Whew! That one was a tricky one. But if you don't let the fraction scare you, then you're good to go. Okay? All right, last one. Practice makes perfect. Heather practices soccer and piano. Each day she practices piano for 2 hours. After 5 days, she practiced both piano and soccer for a total of 20. Assuming she practiced soccer the same amount each time, how many hours did she practice playing soccer? Well, boys and girls, this one was like that one that we did on our test before Christmas. So I'm just going to do this. And I'm going to say, okay, she practiced soccer and piano. And it says that she practices 5 days. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it says after 5 days, she practiced both piano and soccer for a total of 20 hours. So this whole thing equals 20 hours. And then it says each day she practiced piano 2 hours. So we know 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2. But we don't have any idea what soccer is, so we're going to use X for soccer. And now, because we remember how to do this from our test before Christmas break, we can write an equation of what we see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 X's. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 plus 10 for piano equals 20. And now, boys and girls, you can figure out how many hours she worked with or practiced for soccer. I'm going to have you finish this by yourself because all you have to do is do the BU chart. So this is what you have to do, and I'll check it during TLC tomorrow. All right? Set you up, use your BU chart, and see what you can figure out. Going back to our goal, today we will discuss what an equation is and how to use an algebraic expression to solve them, which is what we did through 3 different problems. What model can you use to help solve equations? I would say the model that we use is tape diagrams, but then I would also say that we drew pictures. All right? That's all I have for you today. Talk to you soon. Bye!